I can't say I didn't get King of the Hill when I was a kid, because it's not that complicated. And the jokes are really straightforward, but it didn't speak to me that much when I was really young. But then, sort of early 20s, late teens or whatever, just like going back and watching a whole bunch of episodes, it's probably one of my favorites of that just generation of comedies. It's really, really fucking great.
Yeah, I didn't like it because it was like a Texas, and I was like, that ain't Texas. But then, you know, it's like, whatever.
I think Mike Judge does that, like, insightful, like, this is how things really are kind of comedy very well.
Right.
The theory that Bobby Hill is not Hank Hill's son, Bill Drew.
Oh, I mean,
Bill Dotriebs.
Yeah. And it's so it fits because there's a lot of what Peggy says that she wasn't always with Hank at the time, and Hank can't have kids. He's got a, you know,
It's got a narrow urethra.
not that he can't have kids, but it's extremely difficult. And also the new episodes coming out is that Bobby is a chef in Dallas. That's his career path. And Bill Dotree gave Bobby his family recipe. The argument was like, no, Peggy's too wholesome. This is, and I was like, what about Chief Redcord's son? You really think that what's his face is actually Dale's son? Really? There's a pattern here. There's a consistency here.
I think the idea was, like, I think that one actually makes a lot of sense because throughout the series, Peggy is shown to just be a shittier person than than the way she presents herself.
And hates Bill.
Yeah, she hates, can't stand him.
Yeah, you can't hate without a reason, right? You need something more than just, I don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
Before we begin, the Gamers Advocate would like to remind you that any episode could contain game spoilers, so watch or listen with discretion. And now your hosts, AMKomnenos, Banana, and Legion. Enjoy the show.
All right, do we all have a couple of notes on favorite games? Legion doesn't.
I do.
Does Banana?
I have one game.
Okay, quickly remove Baldur's Gate 3 from the list, Legion, because I'm sick of talking about it. Please, remove it.
I have no games.
Welcome to yet another episode of the Gamers Advocate podcast. We're joined with AMKomnenos, BananaHammockRepublic, and myself, Legion. Today we're going to be going over some top 5 games, and we're not going to go into depth about it. We could obviously do that. We've done something similar in the past, but in no way, shape, or form do I think we're going to be doing something like a tier list or anything like that. We're just going to games that we like, and it's going to be awfully hard for me, at least, to pull it away from the series when the game is especially good, and to say it's got to have some context, though. This is why this particular game out of that series I'm pulling, but I could actually say the whole series is in my top 5. But we're just going to try to isolate a game or two that maybe we consider in our top 5, and games that you might consider playing. And if you have played it before, definitely put it in the comments. If it's a game you'd like to play, put it in the comments. If you think we kind of missed out on a game or two or got the wrong one in the series, put it in the comments. Well, we have a game that we play from time to time called A Bad Description. We need to come up with a name for this. If anybody has a name for our game, please put it in the comments, because we need a name.
It's definitely not our job.
No.
Yeah.
But one of us gives a brief description of a game, and the idea and the hard part is that I do know off the top of my head a good core of games that AMKomnenos has played, ones that Banana has played, and it's hard to sometimes come up with one for me then say, you know what, I know that they played this, without actually revealing the game to them and then destroying the game at the same time. So I think you guys have done this one and it should work. But a letter arrives from beneath the grave of your memory, inked in sorrow, sealed in dust. You follow it into a town not built but remembered, a place unraveling beneath perpetual fog, where time slips sideways and the air tastes of rust and regret. You are not lost, you are summoned, drawn not by hope, but by something older and more patient, an ancient ache curled in the marrow of your sins. This place doesn't forgive. It reveals, and in its mirror you are monstrous and divine, victim and executioner. The streets bend like broken thoughts. Buildings breathe. The sky never changes, but it also always watches. Figures flicker at the edge of vision, some weeping, others waiting. Grief has shape here, guilt wears flesh, and nothing speaks louder than the silence that swells between the sirens. You didn't come here to find someone. You came here to remember why you buried them.
Right, if it's not an RPG, the description might have been longer than the fucking game. I honestly, for the first bit, I was thinking Stardew Valley, but it began to sound less and less like it as time went on.
It's similar.
Like,
Not Graveyard Keeper.
No.
Oh. The issue is, with that long description, I remember bits and pieces of it. I'm just like,
a letter and then some flowery language.
I definitely wrote it in the way in which you feel the game.
No, it might. It's not BioShock, is it?
That's a good guess. No, it's not.
So it's wrong. Great.
Right. But it's a good guess.
I keep leaning towards Darkest Dungeon, but I'm like, that can't be right.
Another good guess. Very similar.
You play Darkest Dungeon.
I regret introducing this game to the group because I'm fucking terrible at it.
Again, it was so long, I've just forgotten half of it again. All right, narrow it down then. Give us a hit. Like, give us a genre or something.
Horror.
We're gonna be here all
Horror.
Horror. I haven't played
Silent Hill.
Got it.
I have never played Silent Hill.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I also haven't ever played Silent Hill, but
There you go.
I'm gonna be honest. I should have guessed that earlier. As you were describing it, I was like, you said something about being in perpetual fog, and I was like, that's Silent Hill.
Or Morrowind.
Yeah.
And then trying to remember, like, trying to go back through your memories and
Mhm.
yeah, it's very clearly Silent Hill now that I've pieced it together.
Yeah, a letter arrives from the very beginning, kind of gives you, specifically Silent Hill 2, but Silent
If
Hill
you've played it.
works. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I do like that you went through that intro and you're like, I try to find a game that Cobb and Banana have both played.
Well,
and the
both
one
of-
you came up
yeah.
with was one neither of us have played.
well, y'all have commented on it before, so I kind of figured y'all had, so that's the only. You know.
We knew it existed. That's
Yeah.
good enough.
I know there's a meme ending with a dog, which might not be the same game, but
Silent Hill for me is easily probably the best horror game of all time, and it's not even. It doesn't. There's a second tier list after that, but you know it's so well done. Yeah.
tell him why he's wrong in the comments.
Yeah. That's what they're here for.
Yeah, they're working on the original Silent Hill remake because the second one did so well, and it kind of made sense that they went to Silent Hill 2 first, because really Silent Hill is almost like that Baldur's Gate versus Baldur's Gate 2. Baldur's Gate 2 is just so much better, but you really can tell a story without the original one. But you know.
Yeah.
So if they went back and remastered Baldur's Gate 2, and I'll be like, I get it. I get it.
If I play 2 for the first time, is it going to really spoil 1 for me? Or is 1 still then very playable?
Very playable.
Okay.
It's a mood. It's a mood. And it's
I'm
really
looking
short.
forward to it. Life's been too happy recently.
It's fairly short. It's not the remaster is actually
Oh,
about.
if that's what you're looking for, play Silent Hill 4 first. Because that one is bad. It's just not good.
Horrifying and bad.
Yeah.
That's what Deadly Premonition is for. I don't need Silent Hill 4.
It's kind of like Resident Evil 4. It's good. They went the other direction.
I say Resident Evil 4 is fucking great.
I know.
What?
Yeah.
I'll fight you.
No. They went in like opposite direction. Whereas I could say I don't think I like Resident Evil 3, but it does show a different direction.
If Resident Evil, if you could make not to the same extent, if you could make an argument that it's essentially the Final Fantasy of the horror genre, where it's constantly following this theme, but it's going in different directions all the time.
Yeah, because 9 is supposed to predate, I think.
Oh no, I don't mean that. I just mean like the games feel so fucking different. Like
The gameplay is different in every entry.
Yeah, I think it's only 1, 2, and maybe 3, isn't it? Where it's quite consistent. But then after that,
Yeah. I feel like those 3 are like puzzle games with a little bit of this shooter adventure going on. And then like you get to 4 and it's very much like a shooter focused game.
5 is
It's
a co-op
very
shooter.
action. Yeah.
6 is a multi sort of squad co-op shooter. 7 is that first-person horror again. 8 is first-person horror with slightly more open-worldy element. 9 we don't know really yet. There was Code Veronica, which was the on-rails shooter. It's had quite a lot of different iterations, which again is cool. I love that. More game series should do this. We don't need more Dragon Quests. We need more Resident Evils.
Yeah. Or Ultima. Ultima kind of did that. Lord British.
Oh god. Because I know he's talking about Ultima, but it also could just be aimed at me.
I just thought that was like, oh god, he's doing accents now.
Lord British has got to be one of my favorite all-time gaming memes of all time, because in Ultima Online, he wanted this. See, he always wanted to create this world where it was a Middle Ages utopia type thing. Everybody's helping each other. It's this cooperative thing. Blah 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 blah. But it was also open world for the most part, so there were no real engagement rules. This is long before, you know, MMOs had ganking as a personality. So people would be in this world and just go into people's houses and take their stuff and fight them and fight the villagers and, you know, kill the merchant. And all this stuff was going on, and Lord British decided to say, hey, look, you know, we need to keep this, tone this down a bit. And so he decides to get on when everybody's on and give his announcement, his speech. He says, look, if we don't do something about it, we're going to have to do something for you, and we don't want to take this away from you. And when he gave that speech, he forgot to turn off his immortality toggle or whatever, and somebody killed him.
Turn on his immortality toggle, right?
Right, exactly. Turned it on. And so somebody killed him.
Why is there a toggle?
Well, he just, you know, he just had a thing. But, you know, so he just, at the time, I guess you would think, like I said, this is before World of Warcraft.
Why is it ever off, though?
Yeah, but it's before World of Warcraft. It's like, it's just one of those things. So
he trusted in our goodness.
He trusted in people's faith. And
what an idiot.
And he got killed, massacred during his speech.
All right, can we have a moment of silence for Lord British, please?
And I thought, if that doesn't tell you about your, you know, online community in a nutshell. So top 5 games. So who wants to start for that? You want me to start, or?
I think Banana should start.
Okay, sounds good.
Final Fantasy Tactics. It's my favorite game across all platforms, all genres. It's just, that story never gets old for me. The gameplay loop is repetitive, but the way in which you progress each class, each job, and then level up each character, and the fact that there is that like infinite leveling glitch that I showcased in my Let's Play, it just means that like progression is always an option. So the gameplay doesn't get stale for me because I can always improve my characters. And then the fact that there are little Easter eggs and hidden characters you can unlock and side quests and everything, like, it's just my favorite game.
Yep, hard to argue. There's nothing. I mean, we're not looking to disagree with anyone, right?
Yeah,
I think it is.
Fuck you! It's not your favorite game. Shut up.
Yeah, I know it's your favorite game, but here's my opinion. It comes from that golden age of Final Fantasy games. It's one of those when it almost felt like the studio could do no wrong. Was it built by the same sort of mainline team?
I don't think so, because it came out the same year as Final Fantasy VII. So I can't imagine they had those devs pulling double time on 2 games that are so different.
But what a back-to-back, like, because we look and we say, you know, the mainline series, they had 7, then 8, then 9, then 10. That's vile. You know, that is an amazing collection. It's easy enough to overlook Tactics, actually, as a part of that as well. So when you add that in, that's just 5 seminal games, just one after the other. It's an incredible achievement.
Yeah. So you haven't played Final Fantasy X-2? Is that what?
How do we get
Well,
him
no,
on?
he was talking about the good ones.
What about
came after
that?
10, silly.
Yeah. What about that one that they just announced on the game show where they're remastering it? I don't know what they're doing to Tactics again.
Oh, I think that's actually a remake.
Okay.
They're going to modernize the gameplay, but they did. This was like the only criticism I had of that announcement. They said they're going to use the War of the Lions translation, which is a better translation, but they changed the language to be more kind of modern, and I feel like the original has just a better script as far as like the way the dialogue sounds. But I'm just happy they're going back to it because I really do want more people to play that game.
Well, now we can go back, since it's going to be voice acted, we can go back to see how accurate you were on your playthrough.
Yeah, that's probably not how I would have described it. I don't know about accurate or even good.
I don't think they'll be able to capture the mood like you did, though. You had a really good job of capturing
Definitely not. The mood of, oh, fuck, I lost my place in this line again. Time to start over.
I'd like to think Final Fantasy Tactics is only enhanced by the Rust Belt charm that you brought to it.
Sure. I just hope there's nobody who watched that playthrough and was like, I'm never going to play this game because of Banana's voice acting.
Specifically.
I'm gonna name three words that would almost certainly have been mentioned by myself or Banana, but I'm gonna add a suffix. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is one of my very favorite games of all time. I think it's a truly special game. I don't think there's been something more interesting than that done in the AAA department in the last goodness knows how many years. Don't get me wrong, indie gaming has plenty of interesting things going on. AA gaming, there's a lot of interesting things going on, but big AAA projects, I think it's very special to take a game that is so incredibly steeped in nostalgia and to build on it in the way that they did is so incredible to have done. I think maybe the Silent Hill 2 team, based on what I've heard, could get somewhere similar to matching that nostalgic feeling and actually developing upon it. This has been something special. And the big thing that I like about it is it's the game that we say we want. And I think it's almost a watermark for what AAA gaming should be, because it's interesting, it's fun, and it's daring. I think I've mentioned before multiple times the idea that no one said no during the development. And that's how you end up with silly mini games. It's how you end up with over-the-top cutscenes. It's how you end up with these weird and wonderful moments all through the game. It's a AAA game where the story actually really fucking matters as well, where it's really about the people more than anything else. And despite the open world mechanics, despite the set pieces, despite the summons, it remains about the people all the way through, in a way that I think something like Final Fantasy XVI didn't always quite succeed in being. Sometimes I thought that fell away from being as focused as it should have been. And then there's one further small point which relates more to the reality and the industry side of it. It's the same team that made Final Fantasy VII Remake, so I think that makes a beautiful idea for what gaming should be, the idea of these studios retaining their staff, keeping them on, and allowing them to develop and improve over multiple generations of their game. And it's the same team now going over into the third game, whatever that's going to be called. So it's the quality of the game itself, which I think is remarkable. It's the ability to actually override nostalgia and produce something that stands alone so incredibly fucking well, to be as interesting as it is, and to actually stand up as a sign of pretty decent industry practice as well. Now, we can talk separately about console exclusivity, which it looks a bit like they're pulling away from. I know there's always rumors about saying, oh, the next FF game, that will be, console independent. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if it will be, but we're definitely seeing a reduction at least as well. So I'm really hoping that that series is able to go on and actually stand as a good example of what AAA gaming can be and what it should be.
Yeah, Sony gets all kind of into their own head. Like, especially with the PS6 being kind of rumored down the road. But yeah, who knows?
Which is a strange thought, because it still feels like we're in the PS4 generation.
Yeah. Well, when you get to my age, you start like, what? There's more than the Super Nintendo?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Switch 2 broke a ton of records. I think it sold 3.5 million copies in 4 days. crazy number.
I actually forgot that had come out.
Yeah.
For all this like hate going on, which I'm not saying is, not qualified or not, but like, oh, we're all going to boycott Nintendo. We can't believe they're doing this, and that. And then they have the hottest selling console ever in the first week.
I do think there was a lot of performative crap along those lines where, you see YouTube creators who are like, here's why you shouldn't buy the Switch 2. And then their next video is, I bought the Switch 2. It's like, fuck you. Have like just a little bit of consistency.
But there's no reward for having consistency because both of those videos are going to do really fucking well.
Yeah.
If you've got a name already behind you, a nice, strong clickbaity title like that will do really well. And also, hypocrisy invites comments. It invites interaction in the comment section. When you watch a video, and this irritates me, when there'll be a video and it will have purposely incorrect subtitles or captions on the video, which first of all is massively disrespectful to people who actually need those. Massively. It's a really arseholey thing to do. Because people who are hard of hearing need this, and we're using it as a joke, as a play, just so we can get people to write in the comments, you spelt that wrong, or you put the wrong word there. The idea of being hypocritical, of making a mistake, can be a marketing tool. So someone literally making a no one should buy this followed by I bought this, they're inviting now all the comments on the fact they bought it, but they're also inviting all the comments on the, hey, didn't you say you weren't going to buy this?
Yeah.
It's like the old headlines in
engagement
newspapers.
farming.
Yeah. Fuck those guys.
So for my game, and I want to be kind of clear, I pretty sure Banana, that's his number one game overall. But I wouldn't say that I'm going to go through this tier list, for me at least, as like my number one game. I'm just kind of going over my top 5. Yeah. But it was kind of hard to pull this one out. But Mass Effect 3 versus 1 and 2, or even Andromeda. I think 3 really tops the...
I can't believe it wasn't Andromeda.
Yeah, it was a close second. But
Tough call.
But there is no Mass Effect 4. Let me be clear about that. And if you think it's Mass Effect 4, want to call them Andromeda, that's fine. That's okay. But BioWare didn't even call it that, so...
You could be wrong. It's okay.
Yeah.
What point are we even making here? Continue. Go.
Well, Mass Effect 3, I think it's really hard to pull that one away from the other two, is kind of my point there. Because a lot of times people are like, Mass Effect 1's my favorite, either because of nostalgia or for one reason or another, the story or something. Or Mass Effect 2, because really most people did get into Mass Effect 3, Mass Effect 2. And that's really their, there's so much more story and content there and whatnot. But I think if you look at the pacing, the story, the combat, 3 puts it all together. So for me, Mass Effect 3 is easily the best one. And for some people, it's, the combat's a little off or this or that. I think the leveling system, perfect. It kind of fits each, if you play it on hard mode or you play it on easy mode, the tone, the combat, everything fits. It's so well balanced. It's so easy to just get into that game from beginning to end and not really struggle with either the mechanics or the story or the pacing or the feels. Or sometimes I think when you're at the Citadel is the only time I feel like I'm a little slowing down, like I'm hitting the mud in the road a little bit. But that's okay, because there's tons of stories there, and if you don't do them, and then when things happen, and if you haven't talked to these people, then you're going to miss some context. So it's laying down some groundwork. It's at least, it gives you a moment of respite, a moment to breathe. So I don't blame the Citadel's pacing in those such sections, but that's the only time I could say that there's a little slogfest. But yeah.
I haven't played I did play Legendary Edition, but it was a few years ago on the PS4, so I don't know. But I wonder how much of things like the Citadel slowing it down could be improved by just the loading screens. I remember they were hard going on the original Xbox version that I used to play. So when you did have to jump between the 5 or 6 areas, it could feel like you were there for a long time, but really you weren't doing much. And I agree with you on Mass Effect 3. I think it's the best one of the bunch. But I think you can make, and there's sort of like a foundational compelling argument for each one to be your favorite. So I think if Mass Effect 1 is your favorite, and we'll ignore nostalgia, ignore that. Mass Effect 1 is probably your favorite because of the RPG-like systems. It's the most flexible in that sense. Mass Effect 2 is probably your favorite if you like that sort of episodic style of gameplay, where it feels a bit like you're playing a sort of space cop show. It's probably the most Spectre-y of the Mass Effect games. And then Mass Effect 3 is just the tightest fucking experience of all 3. And you see that even in the leveling system, which has been so oversimplified, thematically that makes sense. The whole game now is about that direct rush to stop the Reapers. So all of the systems are just narrowed down ever so slightly, which just works. It makes sense. There's logic to it. So I think you can make a good case for all three. And I'm like you. I think 3 is the best of the bunch, with a really small difference between that and 2 and 1.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely probably some people out there who will say like they appreciate Mass Effect 1 more just because Mass Effect 1 feels almost like a complete story on its own, and the other two you kind of need the foundation of previous games, so it's tough to elevate them above the game you needed to play in order to understand that one. But I will say that, you know, even with Mass Effect 2 building off Mass Effect 1 and then Mass Effect 3 building off the previous, they all do have like a complete experience. So you don't quite get the resolution of, you know, defeating the Reapers in Mass Effect 2, but you deal with the collectors and there's an arc there, there's closure at the end, but it's still open-ended to let you go into Mass Effect 3. So I think it's pretty clear that each game has the complete story experience that you're looking for. It's just not until Mass Effect 3 that you get the closure on the full story. So I definitely think it's possible to make that assessment. I do think there will be some people who just appreciate Mass Effect 1 more for being that it feels like it could kind of stand on its own story-wise. So my next one, Baldur's Gate 3. I know Cobb's not happy about me continuously bringing this game up, but I think just because of how tentative I was when they announced they were returning to like one of my favorite video game series of all time, I was nervous they were going to ruin it, and I'm so happy they didn't. I prefer the combat of Baldur's Gate 3 over the originals because I think it really leans into the strategy that could have been there in the first games, that you almost kind of force with the pause system. Like you create your own turn-based system in the originals to actually implement the strategies you want, and now that's a little more straightforward in Baldur's Gate 3. I think the character development they did with the companions you have, the growth that they go through, they all have very satisfying stories on their own. And I think they did find a way to tie it back to the original Baldur's Gate series. So I think just overwhelmingly, I was so incredibly satisfied with that continuation of the series that Baldur's Gate 3 has to be in my top 3 or top 5, whatever we're doing.
I was honestly amazed that people were concerned about Dark Souls, about Baldur's Gate 3. I couldn't feel any concern. I couldn't see a reason to, bearing in mind what Larian had done in those years beforehand. It was in another studio's hands, absolutely, when suddenly you see BG3 pops up on the video at whatever presentation it was. But the minute I learned it was in Larian's hands, despite having zero desire to go and play it myself, there was no part of me that had any doubt that they would make something really, really good, just because of Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2. And just the more I learned about it, the more I just thought, yeah, they're going to nail this. I'm not going to want to play it, but they're going to nail this for the people who want it. It's going to be there. And I remember going back, and weirdly enough, I am in a large disagreement, I think, with Legion on this. I don't remember there being that much outrage about it. I seem to remember the communities that I was in, as soon as it was clear it was Larian, I remember a lot more optimism than genuine concern at that point. There was a few people who were dyed in the wool, don't want anything to change, still wish it was 1999, that kind of thing. Peaked in high school kind of energy. I do remember a bit of that, but on the whole, I remember people thinking, yeah, let's see what they do.
Yeah, the gaming landscape at the time, you had a lot of things like Pillars of Eternity, you know, Obsidian was doing some stuff. A lot of that top-down RPG, the original Fallouts, and, you know, we're taking the similar mechanics to the original Baldur's Gate. And they're saying, look, this works in a certain format, a certain way. Why are we redoing things? Why are we reimagining this way? And I just saw both sides of the coin on that, and one side was just dismissive. You know, they're like, who cares? Baldur's Gate 3, what is this? Where were we resurrecting a game that's 20 years old, 25 years old now? And then at the other side, like I said, you had the old heads who were more or less, we've seen Baldur's Gate outside of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. It's called Dark Alliance 2, which,
Has
whatever.
Nothing to do with Baldur's Gate.
Exactly. But the point is that we've seen a structure where they've tried to take that going forward, and it was like, number one, why? And number two, you failed. And so there was a lot of skepticism when it came to that. But again, it was a totally different developer. And I know what you're saying. Like, if this was in like FromSoft's hand, we'd be like, wow, we're interested.
Oh, they should totally bring that out.
Yeah.
I'd play that. That would be brilliant.
Yeah. But my point here is that it's going to be a situation where you have to have a lot of things.
Play it, but I don't want
do it. Do it.
Well, a lot of things would have to go right for it to be. But like I said, there's interest and then there's execution. And I think Larian did both. And so, like you said, you had a lot of people who were interested in it, but you didn't think that they executed it as far as from your perspective, because it's not a type of game that you really enjoyed. But I do agree that really Baldur's Gate 3 did a fine job for what it was trying to accomplish. I think in story modes, though, it really is fantastically done, but I do have a lot of issues with it. And that, again, this is not going to be the format for that, but I do have a lot of issues with the actual seaming of all those stories together into one type package. You have a shirt that looks good but has very loose threads to it. And so I like I said, but it's a well done story either way. It's really well done. Good choice. What about you, Com?
All right. Weirdly enough, it's now been referenced quite directly, but mine is a FromSoft game, and it's Dark Souls 3, which I think is the peak of FromSoft as far as I'm concerned. And it's another time where, a lot like the Mass Effect series or the Final Fantasy Remake series, for me, there's not a huge difference between the games. And on any day, sometimes Elden Ring can jump in front, sometimes Sekiro can jump in front. But I think my favorite, if I remove nostalgia from the equation, because that would be Bloodborne, if I remove nostalgia, my favorite is Dark Souls 3. I think it's just for a few simple reasons. One is it's the realization of what the studio wanted to make. So when they begin and they create Dark Souls 1, but ignore Demon Souls for now. They build Dark Souls 1 and they build the game in this world that they want to make, but there's just technical limitations in place. There's just not the power to do what they want to do, and there's not the experience in the team to have actually mastered what they wanted to do yet. So if we go back to Dark Souls 1, for all the good parts of the game, sadly there's the second half of the game, which is far and away weaker than the first. It's almost incredible the drop-off in quality there. It feels like someone else made it. Did they? I wouldn't be surprised to find that out. And then you have things like it's the Capra demon boss fight, where he's accompanied by two dogs in a very, very small area. It's just an absurd choice, which when you look back, you'd think, hold on, a team with experience wouldn't have done this. Dark Souls 3 is that team coming back with experience. And they revisit the same areas. They rebuild on that same world. And they manage to create something that's just what they wanted to do and found themselves unable to do at the time. It's a studio who learned their style. And I think even though they went on and they did Elden Ring afterwards, even though they went on, they did Sekiro afterwards, Dark Souls 3 is really boosted by that one golden thing. It's streamlined. It's got a really, really tight structure from start to finish. You go from point A to point B to point C to point D. It's the Final Fantasy 13 of the Dark Souls series, and thank goodness it is, because it means that every single thing that they do is done incredibly well, because it's a lot easier to do 20 bosses than it is 160. The music in the game is not better than Elden Ring. Don't think so. But there's not a bad track in there, whereas Elden Ring, when you build that many, something's got to give. So it's just the perfection. It's the symbolizing of a company who had wanted to do something and have now finally had the chance to do it with a little bit of experience. And they managed to keep their vision so tight that there's almost no room for them to get it wrong. Dark Souls 3.
Yeah, I agree overwhelmingly. I think looking at Elden Ring compared to Dark Souls 3, there's certainly an argument that Elden Ring is more popular. There's probably a bigger fan base for it. But it doesn't feel like a Dark Souls game. it has a lot of the same combat. It has a lot of the same progression, a lot of the same kind of character building, all the same stats and structuring your character around certain weapons and gear. But it doesn't feel like it belongs in the Dark Souls trilogy. Obviously, it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's why it's a new game. But it's kind of like just far enough removed from the core elements of Dark Souls that it really does feel like Dark Souls 3 is the pinnacle of Souls games. And then Elden Ring is what happens when you can leave certain pieces of that behind and make something new. So yeah, I completely agree. As far as Dark Souls games go, Dark Souls 3 is kind of where they completed that vision, and then they were like, all right, time to move on to something a little different.
Absolutely. I think it's worth considering as well that within Elden Ring you do have the much more Souls-like moments of things like Stormveil Castle, which I think is about as good a Souls dungeon as has ever been made. And that's the conscious point of that game, isn't it? The legacy dungeons are meant to feel, clues in the name, like the original Souls experience. So you have the two in particular that stand out for me is always Stormveil Castle and the City of Leyndell. I think they're about as good as any dungeon that has ever been made, but that's not the game. The game is that, but it's also the Weeping Peninsula. The game is that, but it's also Volcano Manor. The game is that, but it's also the mountaintops area. And when you put it all together, I just don't think it's quite as good. If you speedrun Elden Ring and you just follow the path and you go through Stormveil Castle and then you go to Liurnia and then you go to Leyndell, and if you just play on that path and play it a bit more like a Souls game, it's about as good as Dark Souls 3. It's very, very, very good. But that wasn't the point, because there's all the rest of it as well. So yeah, that's where we are. Pretty much as Banana summed it up, as they were saying just last time.
The Demon Souls, it's interesting, that whole story of how that game even came to be. It was a failed project that they got this young developer who really had no experience. He said, just do whatever you want. This is already a failed project. It just let you, experiment with it. And that's what he did. That's how it came to be.
So let me tell you a story, right?
Yeah, story
home.
Calm story time.
Go on, Legion. What's your second game?
So I've got Cyberpunk 2077. It's actually my top RPG of all time, just when we're talking about RPGs. When the game first came out, of course, it was...
Remember to use those comments to tell Legion why he's wrong.
Yeah. When the game obviously first came out, it was a buggy mess. I get it. And very few games will I upgrade my entire system just for one game. That was that game. And I still had a hard time playing it. But the reason why I was able to get through it was because I had a fairly new rig, and so I was able to kind of push through some of those issues that a lot of people were just struggling with, and now it's highly optimized. But I kept saying, there is an amazing game underneath all this mess. It's there. The story is not going to be different. It's just getting through the story, right? I said, but there's an amazing game underneath all this. Yeah, you don't have all the background choices but neither does Shepard, right? Whether you choose a life with your parents or a life where you went into the military early or whatever your background is, it's not that significant, similar to Cyberpunk. And so a lot of times the criticism of well, my background story didn't really make any difference. Some of the best games in history give you an illusion of a backstory, but that's not the point. The story is the here and now. What are you doing going forward? Because that's really what's important. And that's kind of where they took that story. And between the combat is obviously meant to be adaptive to whatever you want to do. And then it becomes relatively easy after a while. But that is almost consistent with the baseline story too. So there's nothing that happens in the game that I think, from either a pacing, the combat, the environment, the places you go to, the things that you do, the people you interact with, that isn't consistent with where you are in the story. It's so tight. It is that real finely done suit with tight seams. That's what I'm saying. So I love Baldur's Gate 3 to death. It's right there behind Cyberpunk. But Cyberpunk really kind of puts all those things together, and there's such a great philosophy behind the game that we've gone over the whole like why it's first person versus not first person, things like that. There's a whole philosophy behind the game that really makes you replay it again and see it from a different perspective, just like a good movie. When you see things, it's like, oh, I didn't see that the first time. It does this constantly. There's tons of Easter eggs, a lot of things related to Blade Runner, and they're not even trying to hide it. They're just putting it out there. So if you know the reference, you know the reference, and it makes a really good, without it being a one-to-one, you're able to kind of like, I see that. And it makes you really think. There's so many great things that CD Projekt did with Cyberpunk. It's obviously a labor of love. They keep adding to it, free patches. Their definition of a DLC is more or less just that, downloadable content, and they're pretty much free. Their idea of expansions is like paid things like Phantom Liberty. So when you see like there's a DLC coming, it may just be more content that you download for free. So that's the only difference between that. So I love the fact that Larian has done a lot of stuff for free. There's been nothing that they've added extra. But to a certain extent, CD Projekt has been the same way. But yeah, CD.
I always thought Cyberpunk had something of a Mass Effect feel throughout the game, actually. Obviously, the combat feels very, very different. Tactically, it's very different. It's not that. It's just the feel, it's the tone. And I think it's based upon the way that you play it again. The way I played Cyberpunk was not doing a huge amount of side quests and not going out and seeing the world. Not least because at the time I was still running into performance issues at that point. And I played quite a while after it came out, but it was prior to the Phantom Liberty DLC, which I think came with a large amount of changes to the engine, the bugs, etc. But when I played it as a very streamlined game, just doing mostly the main story, and now and again just popping off and doing a small side quest or dealing with a gang or whatever, it had a lot in common with Mass Effect 3. That feel of being pushed along, and the story has real momentum and drive that just keeps you going. And it's so engaging. And not every game is, I think, oftentimes. And this is something I've criticized CD Projekt Red for before with The Witcher 3. I think The Witcher 3 doesn't do that very well. It slows the game down, it loses focus, which is why it'll never be in one of my top games. Is it brilliant? Yeah. Is it like top? No. No, not even close. Cyberpunk, I think they got a lot closer when it comes to the main story and allowing you to keep wanting to progress that, which is ultimately what the point of most of these games is. Yes, there's the side content, but there's a kind of reason we give it that name. The main game is the cut and thrust. And Cyberpunk did a fantastic job of just pushing you forward and keeping you going.
And you get to romance Meredith Stout.
I didn't know.
I don't know if romance is the right word.
I was very loving.
I think for me, one of the things I've noticed, because I still haven't played through like the actual story of Cyberpunk. I've played bits and pieces and I've made some progress, tried to play in my normal RPG way where it's like, oh, I'm in this area, let's do all the side quests and then progress. That's a bad idea. That is not the way to play Cyberpunk. And that, I think that got in the way of my enjoyment of the game. And now I know when I do eventually go back to Cyberpunk, don't do that. Play the game, the story focused. And if you feel up to it, do a side quest here and there. But one of the things I've noticed with a lot of the way I see people play the game, like streamers and Let's Plays and things like that, is it almost has that kind of Saints Row progression where it starts off and combat is very challenging and you're strategizing and you're using cover and using all of your hacking abilities. And then you progress to a point where you've built your character in such a way that combat is almost trivial. And it's that like almost weird power fantasy built into the late game where it's just like, it almost drives home the themes of Cyberpunk even more, where it's like the augmentations that you have can make you so ridiculously good at whatever it is that you want to do, that if you just build kind of your personality around those things, you're almost guaranteed success. And I think that is a really incredible thing to kind of drive home a story theme in gameplay. So I absolutely agree.
And speaking purely on a mechanical level as well, that's a better way for game design, in my opinion, generally. Let me be overpowered. If I want to go and over level, if I want to go and learn how to play my character, let me have that. and let me have that moment. And it's what will always be a criticism of Final Fantasy VIII, Elder Scrolls Oblivion, is that feel of, hold on, why now can every bandit still match me, despite the fact that I am this heroic hero of Kavad, champion of Cyrodiil, etc., etc. Why are they all now wearing glass armor and Daedric armor? No, sometimes I want to be massively over level and go and pound on some street villains, like the Batman approach. I just want to do that. And having that ability is perfect. I want you to let me do that. And you've got to be careful as a player. If you start doing this and you ruin the end game for yourself, all right, that's on you. But they give you the chance to do this. And that's so important. And just one other tiny thing, sorry, when you were saying about that's the wrong way to play Cyberpunk, go and do the side quests and so forth, or try and clear out the side quests, a better way of saying it. Yeah, I agree. And it's a critique on the game design as well. If, as you're building the game, you're building a system where we can approach the game multiple ways, we can go and do loads of side quests, we can go and do the main game, we can go and dick around, it's on you as a game designer to make sure that this feels like an equally valid way to play the game. If it doesn't, you've hampered yourself there, and it is something that they should be criticized for. It's fairly minor, but it's worth keeping in mind.
Yeah, I don't blame the grocery store for having all the grapes, the red grapes, the green grapes, and everything. I want to try them all, but I can't. Right? Just sometimes you have to go through, when you're going through it, decide, what do I want to do right now? What's important for me right now? I may want to try the 5 different types of lettuces, but Cyberpunk is like that. It's presenting it to you. It doesn't necessarily mean you got to go do it. You just kind of like, what do I want to accomplish this time? And then the next time you go to the grocery store, you might want to try something different. It's kind of presented like that. It's not really a requirement to do this stuff. It's not the type of RPG that says you're going to miss out on some details if you don't come back and do this stuff. That's the other side of the coin. But one thing about the overpowered thing portion, and I'll let this drop. But one thing that Cyberpunk does differently than other RPGs is in Baldur's Gate. We haven't gone to Baldur's. We've done 3, but one thing that CD Projekt Red is, I think they took a lot of influence from old BioWare games, that when you become overpowered, you become to discover that overpowered level lets you discover a bigger world behind that nobody sees. So it's integrated into the story. So yes, your combat may be fairly trivial, as Banana said, but the bigger picture is that now that you've seen that, now that opens a door that is closed to everybody else. And that's where the story takes off again. They just did a really great job with that.
Paper Mario, the 1,000-Year Door. I think that's probably one of my favorite RPGs of all time. I think it is a very interesting take on trying to integrate Mario into RPGs. I mean, we got Super Mario RPG, which for people who did play it when it originally came out was beloved, but it was not nearly as popular as the other games that Mario is featured in. And then the original Paper Mario was not bad. It wasn't great in my opinion, but it wasn't what 1,000-Year Door came to be. I think 1,000-Year Door did a really great job with progression and always kind of giving you just enough to keep you wanting to play more. It gave you new abilities that made traversing the area interesting, and then gave you kind of that incentive to go back and revisit places you had already been with your new abilities, and gave you guidance towards that. It wasn't just like hey, remember that little platform you saw 40 hours ago in the first dungeon? No, there's now somebody who's like, hey, I need you to go do something for me, and it's back in that first dungeon, and I didn't bring this up until you had the ability you needed to actually access the area that I'm sending you to. Yeah. So I think it did a really good job with kind of making sure that they really got the most out of whatever assets they put into the game. They didn't ever like leave something on the table with their level design. I think the combat is pretty fun. It's an interesting take on turn-based combat. The story is fun as well. There cute little jokes here and there, but there's also kind of like a real nefarious villain, and obviously it's cartoony, and you never really feel that sense of like dread, like, oh, he's going to succeed, he's kind of incompetent, and then you reach the real villain and you're like, yeah, I kind of saw this coming, but I still think I'm in control. I just think it was such a wonderful kind of surprise to find a great RPG in the Mario IP.
Death by 1,000 paper cuts.
I mean, I've not got much to add. I've never had the chance to play it.
It's wonderful. It is a little rough to go back to now. I think it for first playthrough, if you go back now, it'll hold up. But if you go back like I have with, years of experience built on after this game came out, I go back and I'm like, I want to do the things faster. I want to progress.
I believe, if I'm right, that the combat is a direct inspiration for Clair Obscur. It's turn-based combat. I believe the quick-time combat elements are lifted fairly directly from it, in the same way that the Pictos are lifted largely from the junction system in Final Fantasy VIII, which is a good thing. It's okay to be inspired. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things I really enjoyed about it, that turn-based with little quick-time elements. And it's not quick-time like, oh, surprise, press this button while you had set the controller down. It's you are choosing to do this action. There's going to be a quick-time event as a result. Be ready for it. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I know with QuickTime with me, I'm not a fan. Because unless it's like all the time, and I can kind of, mentally prepare for that. When it's here and there, that's why I don't like Mass Effect 2. It's just, Yeah.
This is definitely like there is a period where you need to be ready for QuickTime events, and outside of those periods, they don't exist. So.
Yeah, which is pretty much exactly the Clair Obscur system. It's very, very similar. If you select an attack, you're going to have to push this button when the pop-up appears on screen for pretty much every attack. There's not really anything where it doesn't happen. It never happens in the middle of cutscenes. It's 3 minutes, something's happening, and all of a sudden, pick up the controller. It's not that. And it's used not sparingly, because it's all throughout the game, but the context in which it's used is sparing. It's really just in combat after pushing another button to instigate this.
Yeah, in some of the older Tomb Raider games, that's how the QuickTime actually happens, is during the cutscenes. I'm like, no.
Xbox Spider-Man game, same story.
I hate it. I just want to either watch the cutscene or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah, it feels like putting it in a cutscene misses the point of cutscenes. Like, if you want me to play the game, don't put a cutscene in. And if you want me to just sit and watch as you do something you couldn't do in the game engine, then it's not gameplay anymore. It's a video I'm watching.
Yeah. And
trying to blend the two of them together without like giving me that guidance of like, hey, this is actually a game sequence, not a cutscene. It's just gonna bring your game down in my estimation. I'm just gonna be like, I thought I wasn't playing anymore.
Yeah, quick time events is one where I generally agree with the principle that we don't want them, but every now and again there'll be one that I like so much that I don't care anymore. So the main example, and I've given it before, is something like Spider-Man on the PlayStation, where, I can control this game the entire time, but every now and again it's just going to take control from me and do a more Spider-Man-y moment. And just to give me some participation, I'm going to have to tap L2 and R2 together. I can't really get it wrong because the game's going to slow right down so that I can do this input. But there's so few and far between these options that generally I think it's not too bad that we've consigned these QuickTime event things to the dustbin of video game history. How often do you really see them now in cutscenes? It felt like for a while they were becoming a real big thing.
Yeah, Bananas played the king of all time QuickTime games. It's the Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer.
Yeah.
Oh god. Yeah. You're absolutely right, but that's not even what I was thinking when you said that. But yeah, that's exactly what that game is. Except it's a QuickTime event that doesn't tell you which button to press.
Yeah,
it's just, here's your opportunity to press a button. Figure it out.
Analyze everything on screen. Now you've got 1.5 seconds. Oh, and the answer won't make sense.
Not
Yeah.
even one half, like half a second, maybe.
Yeah.
It's crazy. All right, Com, what do you got?
The greatest modern tactics game, and probably the greatest tactics game of all time, XCOM 2. I think it. I just realized what important word is in the title, which inspired Banana's face. I think that became the standard bearer for modern tactics games. So we have XCOM the reboot, which takes place in around 2012. I can't remember the exact date. And that really breathed life into a genre which I think had pretty much fallen by the wayside and we had generally gotten rid of. And we see very quickly in the aftermath of that, the development, particularly via platforms like Kickstarter, of way too fucking many of these. And so many of them are just forgettable. You've got the truly forgettable ones like Massive Chalice. You've got the kind of forgettable ones like Expedition Rome and Banner Saga. I was making some notes here on these. Then you've got some which are a little bit stronger. Wasteland, Wasteland 2, Wasteland 3, Shadowrun Returns. Okay. They've all got a lot in common with XCOM and XCOM 2 because it's just a system that worked. Taking away the turn units we had in the original UFO Enemy Defense or XCOM and replacing it with just the two actions, the run and shoot, or run and run again, or run and use grenade. Just that simplification of a relatively complicated system and the ability to port it to console, they genuinely gave this entire genre just a whole new lease of life. But there is a problem that these games always have. Always, all of them, even the best ones. They get really repetitive after about 15 to 20 hours. All of them. XCOM 2, I think, is one of the only ones that doesn't. Because particularly played in its full form with the War of the Chosen DLC and the Alien Hunters DLC, which I think now is just the way that you play that game. You have super enemies which can appear at random on any mission. You've got super enemies of a different kind that appear at random defending alien bases. You've got endless different styles of missions. There's the mission where you have timers, there's the missions where you don't, there's your base being attacked. There's missions where you have to speed across the map quickly and get there to solve problem X before something happens. There's missions where you actually have to do really quite the opposite. There's missions where you can't use explosives because all of a sudden now that's going to bring the zombies in. There's missions where you really should use explosives because otherwise you're going to find yourself surrounded. It just always feels different. Not many of these games do that. I can't count how many tactics games I've played, particularly that modern generation, the ones inspired by XCOM 2, inspired by XCOM and XCOM 2. How many of them are really fun for 10 hours? And by 15 it's a bit of a slog. And how many of them, and this is the golden thing, how many of them I've never seen the ending for because I just stopped caring. It's so many. XCOM 2 I haven't seen the ending for because I'm really bad at the game. That's not the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely keeps the feeling like you're in a live world because of the randomness between the scenarios that you run into. So,
and it does something as well these games don't always often do very well. It's just got it's not an interesting narrative, but it has a narrative. It's got characters and it's got story, which can just keep the game's momentum flowing. And these don't always have that. I think tactics games, we often end up intra-mission moments. They often feel a bit spreadsheety. It's a bit dull, go in, upgrade weapons, yada, yada, yada. XCOM, squad-based upgrades. As soon as someone's got that new laser rifle, everyone's got that new laser rifle. As soon as you upgrade the armor, everyone's got the armor. It's that same thing that I've mentioned, I think with the previous, with Dark Souls 3, and it was mentioned with Mass Effect as well. It's just streamlined. And whilst, don't get me wrong, I do love choice, sometimes streamlining just really, really helps. And this is one of those examples.
Every indication that I'm getting is that the new Star Wars tactics game is going to be XCOM based. It's going to be very interesting. Yeah, because now you have like not just, human characters, but you're going to have like aliens with different abilities. You're going to have different classes with different abilities. And so I imagine the depth is going to be quite high.
There's an interesting game like that. I would advise people to check it out if this kind of genre interests you, and you may have overlooked it. I overlooked it because of the branding at first. Marvel's Midnight Suns is very much worth looking at in this genre because it's pretty much what you've just said there. We've now got superheroes involved. So it takes on a more asymmetric approach than you have with XCOM. I think XCOM is generally designed that if I've got 3 soldiers and my opponent has 3 soldiers and we're all active and we can see each other, I might have a problem here because we're quite evenly matched and balanced. Midnight Suns isn't that. You're playing as superheroes. Naturally, you can absolutely knock villains, henchmen apart, but now there's enemy heroes as well. So anyone who hasn't played, Midnight Suns and you like that kind of game, the XCOM type game, give it a try. It's a bit of a dark horse. It's probably not going to come back with a sequel or anything similar, so it's probably the only one of this game we're ever really going to get. It's worth a look.
I still don't understand why we're not mentioning Tactics and Final Fantasy Tactics. Because, I mean, the unique classes in Final Fantasy Tactics are kind of exactly what you were just describing. As you go through, you can recruit generic soldiers, and they have access to all the base classes. But what really makes the combat interesting and the story interesting is you recruit unique soldiers who are people who play a role in the story, and they come with a unique base class that gives them abilities not everybody else has access to. And those are your superheroes. Those are your unique abilities that change the gameplay to the point where you're not just evenly matched against everybody, and you need to find a way to strategize and build your tactical combat to most effectively use those abilities. And it sounds like that is what Marvel Midnight Suns did. It's just not a Final Fantasy game, so I'm not interested.
Broad strokes, it didn't. I think the reason that didn't come up with me is because they feel like two different genres to me. In my mind, there's modern tactical combat, and that's really broad because a lot of it's not even that modern, but it's just a different feeling. And that would be games like XCOM, Wasteland, Midnight Suns, etc. And then you've got the other field, which is Final Fantasy Tactics. I can never pronounce this one. Sokoden, Vandal Hearts. And it just feels like a sort of different kind of game, a different genre. Oh, and the standard bearer for it as well, Fire Emblem. And they just feel like they come from two different worlds.
Yeah. I think that's pretty reasonable. I think that that grid system, kind of count the number of squares you are away from somebody and see if you can reach them with any of your attacks, that is kind of a classic tactical, and it doesn't really feel quite as close to the modern tactical game.
Yeah.
So I totally get that.
I'd be very interested to see what a modern Final Fantasy Tactics game would look like. I don't mean just what we're going to get with the remaster and remake, which, good. That's really cool. That's going to actually be there for the world to try. But I'd be really interested what a studio now, if they're approaching Final Fantasy Tactics for the first time without the weight of their legacy upon them, I'm really curious what they would do. Because we do know that studio and that family, they like to do weird things. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to see what they'd come up with.
I was going to talk about KOTOR, and sometimes you have I think,
no,
yeah. Well, with Com has said before, because I've shown y'all that diagram where it has like a lot of people are like KOTOR 2, and then the vast majority is like no, KOTOR the original, and then the vast majority says KOTOR 2, and then at the very end, the two ends of the spectrum is KOTOR the original one, and for various reasons. I think that actually is quite apt, because for me, it is going to be KOTOR 2 still. Com, I think, has said he's on the side of the original KOTOR, which I totally understand. The thing is that KOTOR 2, for me, either which one I say, KOTOR or KOTOR 2, it's 9/10 of what I'm referencing is the story, the gameplay, the mechanics, and some of the in the engine that just fights you is not fun. The combat to me still is fun in a certain way, but it's that D&D system that's going on in the background that you're not seeing. So it's very similar to like the original Baldur's Gate, but in a different point of view, where you have your squad that's out there. You have, Mass Effect type basically, without you not being, you're always Shepard in Mass Effect, but in KOTOR, you can take any one of these characters, and as they fall, if your character falls, then you go to the next character. If all of them are, then the game over. You have to restart. But the story in KOTOR 2 specifically is so intricate and in depth, and they really took a lot of things as like, what is the Force? What is this? What's in this story that makes it unique? We're not just going to say the Force is going to be our reason. It's the Force. It's the way. It's just things are mysterious. Things work in mysterious ways because of the Force. The story really made a hard effort to say, what if? And a lot of the criticism I had in the original KOTOR, especially with Revan saying, you know what, you Jedi, you guys are not doing enough. This will end in a destruction for the rest of the galaxy if we don't take action. And the Jedi are just seen as like this great entity after he's already accomplished everything he was supposed to, that he did for them. He saved the galaxy, basically. And yet the Jedi reap the rewards, even though they ostracized him. So KOTOR 2 takes that and spins it. And it says, these Jedi are not that good. The Sith side are not that bad. It kind of grays up everything. And it really sees the entire story of Star Wars in a whole new light. And I kind of think that between Dave Filoni and a bunch of the other people who've been taking Star Wars and whatever, they've been trying to catch that spirit since then. There's a lot of things that they've kind of incorporated in some of the newer movies, some of the newer shows, and they haven't really quite gotten it. But I think KOTOR 2 really understood the mission and applied it towards that. So KOTOR 2 and KOTOR, which I'm hearing still rumblings, it's definitely with Saber right now, the remaster. It's definitely still in their books. It's in their financial quarters that they have to show to shareholders. And they had the president of the Saber, the CEO. He said that everything that they've said before, as far as like pending projects, are still 100% active and going. And he didn't mention specifically KOTOR, but it is on their books, so it hasn't been scrapped. It's still out there, but we'll see. But it definitely is one of the greatest games of all time. It's worth a playthrough.
I am super happy to hear that it's still on their books, because I think we've mentioned this before. I want to experience the story. I want to play the games, but trying to play the originals just feels so dated that I've had so much trouble to like actually get through it to get that experience. And I feel like treating it almost as a chore is going to do it like a disservice to the story. So I'm really looking forward to the idea that they've remastered it and brought it back so I can get that real experience.
Yeah, I think it's honestly, it wouldn't even crack, I think, the top 25 or 30 for me. And it's really based upon how it's aged. And this would be for KOTOR and KOTOR 2. The difficulty in actually getting access to a copy that runs even reasonably well, and the fact that we have to do so much damn jury rigging to get it to run correctly. And I think for myself, I know people won't always agree with this, I think just Mass Effect did everything KOTOR did but better. And Mass Effect ultimately became, for me, the Dark Souls 3 of KOTOR. It was what they probably would have liked to have done if they had had the ability to do it at the time. So it's not really a problem with KOTOR itself, it's more just what came after. And I remember playing KOTOR when it came out. I loved it so much. Like, it was really one of my favorite games when it was much easier to accept things like the dice rolling system that was happening behind the scenes. Now, it wouldn't get close. But if I put myself back in the body of younger me, I can still see why.
So yeah, I guess we'll wrap it there for this discussion. Not surprising that our wordy asses couldn't keep the episode brief and get through our top 5 fairly quickly. So we'll continue this discussion in another episode. If you enjoyed the content, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Make sure you set the alerts up so that you know when a new video. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like it. Let us know in the comments what we got wrong, what we got right, via your opinions on the discussion we've come up with. And if you're interested, feel free to join the Discord, which is linked in our description. You can give us a little more insight into what kind of videos or topics you'd like to see us discuss. But thank you guys for hanging out, and we'll see you guys in the next video.
Bye-bye.